Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video. Today, we are doing something a little bit different. Not only are we doing a live show, so I've been one of about 4 or 5 opportunities got to do this. It's a fun time and an opportunity for fans to also add their own thoughts and excitement as well. But not only are we doing a live show, but we also have the greatest in the game, BJ Rains from Bronco Nation News on. Today, we're going to be looking at Boise State's fall camp. So the fall camp starts Monday or today, but really officially Monday. And this is an exciting time for the program. After coming off of a CFP run last season, Boise State has a chance to not just show that it was a one-horse team, the Ashton-Jeanty, kind of a one-time fire year, but to show that Boise State is back. This is an opportunity for the team to continue that success and build on it. There's a lot of excitement for the program. Obviously, Boise State loses some key players. Ashton-Jeanty, obviously, like we said already, and you also are going to lose Ahmad Hassanin and Simpson and some of the other guys that transferred or graduated. But there are still a ton of guys coming back, and it's a very, very exciting time to be a Boise State fan. And as part of that, I've got BJ Rains coming on. We're going to look at the fall camp. We're going to look at the biggest questions facing this team, look at some of maybe the concerns that the fan base has, some of the excitement. And then we're also going to take a look at just what brought BJ to Boise as well. It's a whole thing today. We're going to look at all of that. We're going to start off with a little look at BJ Rains and his entrance onto the Boise State media scene and how he built his way all the way up through Bronco Nation News and now part of 24/7 Sports. And then we'll get to the fall camp stuff as well on the back end. So we want you to be part of this conversation. So leave us your thoughts in the comments. It's a live discussion. I'll be bringing up those comments as we go throughout as well. Your excitement for the season and your excitement for the top questions for fall camp. So BJ, thanks so much for joining me today. It's gonna be great to have you on.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Like what you've been doing there, and glad to find the time that finally works and be able to join you. And honored that you had me, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I had you on a couple times, but it's been a little while, so it's a great time to recap and to look back. A lot has changed since the last time that you were on. I think last time you were on was maybe the review for the 2022 season or something like that. So obviously, a lot has changed for Boise State since then, and they find themselves in a very, very different spot. But before we start talking about that, I want to look at your career coming up through the ranks, getting to the Boise State media sphere, and then just building your way up to 24/7 Sports. So just starting off the bat here, I like to do this with all my videos, like to have a little bit of a discussion interview section about the guests themselves on the front end. So what got you into journalism? That was obviously a passion that you've developed. So how did you get into that field and what drove you to that career?
Well, both my parents are in the journalism field. My dad has, been very high in the journalism field, is in multiple Hall of Fames, and kind of growing up, just living around, with him, always traveling and working and writing. We've lived in different cities. He was working for USA Today and some other publications, some papers in St. Louis and national places, and wrote a lot of books as well. He's written almost 40 books. And so that was what most of his career, at least the last several years in terms of income, has come from. But just kind of growing up, seeing what it was like and how cool of a job it was to get paid to go watch sports. And I've always loved sports my whole life and knew that I wanted to get into it, and wrote for the school paper in high school. And, that's about when I probably realized that I wasn't going to be good enough to have a career as an athlete. So I knew I had to find another kind of venue to do that, and decided to give sports writing a try. I thought about maybe being an agent or something like that at first, but I'm not great with math, so I didn't want to take all the finance classes in college and stuff. So decided to give journalism a try, and ended up writing for the school paper in high school, like I said, then wrote for the school paper in college at the University of Kansas, and just kind of worked my way up and got a couple of good internships, and one thing led to another, and ended up in Boise, Idaho at the Idaho Press Tribune newspaper, and thought I'd be there for a year or two and move back to the Midwest or St. Louis, and loved it here so much that, almost 13 years later, still living here in Boise, and my wife, and got both my kids born here in Boise. So just loving it here. And like I said, it's crazy. I think football season 13, I want to say. So it's pretty crazy how quick it's gone, but loving every second of it and looking forward to the season.
Can you talk a little bit about that journey to Boise and what drew you here in the first place? You said it wasn't necessarily something you thought you were going to come here and be here for 13 seasons like you have, graduating from Kansas. And so the Jayhawks there, and they've had a couple of exciting years recently, but obviously graduating from Kansas, coming to Boise. What was it that drew you here? And then what was it that really kind of sold you on Boise when you got here?
Yeah, so I was working for now they're called FanDuel Sports, but before it was Bally's Sports, and before that it was It's had all these different names, but when I was there, it was called Fox Sports Midwest, and they were the outlet that aired all the Cardinals games and Blues games, and they had hired some writers for their website. So I worked for about 3 years kind of writing content, features, game stories, all kinds of stuff for basically covering all the St. Louis area teams, and that included like the St. Louis Billikens basketball and Mizzou football and basketball, and Cardinals, Blues, and at that point the Rams were still there in St. Louis too. So I was able to kind of get a ton of experience writing articles for the website, but kind of was getting to a point where I was kind of stagnant and just kind of wanted something, where I could get 401k and things like that. And so decided to health insurance, as I was getting ready to get off my parents' health insurance. So was looking for something a little more full-time and stable, even though that was, I guess, technically full-time pay, but didn't have all the benefits of full-time. So I was looking around, and I wanted to, baseball was my first love. So I applied for a job covering the Oakland A's with a newspaper out in Oakland, and was one of the finalists for that, and didn't get it. And the kind of advice they gave me was that, hey, loved your stuff, but you're only working for kind of a website. So we didn't have a lot of experience kind of with a deadline or filling copy in a newspaper and kind of the beat writing, stuff that goes with a newspaper reporter. So they said, hey, go get any job you can, pro, college, just get a beat writing job for a team. Doesn't matter how big or small the paper is, just get some experience for a year or two, and then you can, probably get any job you want at that point. And so there was I went on the journalism jobs website right after that and saw 2 openings. There was one cover in Alabama football and one cover in Boise State football, and sent off my stuff for both of them. And right place, right time. Within 24 hours, the Idaho Press Tribune got back to me. Dave Southern was leaving to go to the Statesman. It was the middle of spring camp, and they were looking for somebody, and I was looking for a job, and it was kind of right place, right time. And I did back then they didn't even have Zoom. I was still on Skype, so I had my Skype interview, and ended up getting the job, and had never been to Boise, never been to Idaho, and hadn't really been out west a whole lot, and piled up in my car and drove out here sight unseen. And like I said, thought I'd be here a year or two, but really, love the community, love the Treasure Valley, love all the fans and everybody else, and has just decided that this was, to this point, a place that we didn't want to leave. So one thing led to another. 9 years with the Idaho Press, and then, as we'll get into, decided to start Bronco Nation News, and then just continue to keep trying to build that. Never in a million years would I thought when I sent off the resume for the Idaho Press Tribune that I'd be here 13 years later. But it's been a lot of fun, and I'm loving every second of it.
I love that. One more thing Boise State has over Bama. We beat them out. We got BJ. I love that. So you talked about Bronco Nation News, and so obviously you did the normal media route stuff for a while there, and then Bronco Nation News came along. And so before we just talk about that, that is very, very unique, obviously, what Bronco Nation News is in the college football landscape. There's not a ton of teams that have such a large hometown media presence that Bronco Nation News brings to it. And so what inspired you to create that, and just kind of what brought you into that Bronco Nation News world?
Well, I mean, I was with the newspaper for 9 years, and I loved it. But, you have the unfortunate direction that newspapers are heading, or were heading, especially back then. Not a lot of people my age were buying newspaper subscriptions. And so it was becoming more and more frustrating just to get road trips approved and get equipment approved to purchase. And it was just, unfortunately, just kind of saw the writing on the wall that it's going to be really tough to do the job the way that I think it needs to be done with the current set of resources and things that they were giving us. So I loved every second at the Idaho Press. It was Idaho Press Tribune. Then we transformed to Idaho Press. Loved every second of it. Loved the people there. Have not a single bad thing to say about them, but it was just got to a point where they probably couldn't pay me anymore that I wanted. And they, like I said, it was getting tougher to want to go to the NBA draft or the NFL draft or the combine, or just kind of, and even regular, basketball road games that I think is essential to the job. Wanting to go was just getting a little tougher. And like I said, there was a lot of warning signs that the newspaper industry was going in the wrong direction. And so my wife actually was the one that kind of pushed me to do this, and she had been pushing me for a while, and just said, hey, why don't you give this a shot? Go out there on your own and see what you can do. And so it was probably 2 years or so that I actually thought about this and really thought about it and said, maybe someday. But it got to a point where I just decided that it was something I really should pursue. And I was able to get, I don't even like the name Bronco Nation News, to be honest with you. The best name I had, I wish I would have saved it, but it was Blue Turf Sports when we were over at the Idaho Press. I I started the website there, Blue Turf Sports, which ended up being, kind of like what we're doing now. But I like that as a better name. I don't love Bronco Nation News, but that was the name. I'm just being honest. That was the name that they had a fan blog that started back during the Kellen Moore era. This guy named Drew Vockel did a tremendous job kind of building that site up. And so they had a very strong social media following, like 60,000 on Facebook. They've had 8 or 9,000 on Twitter and Instagram and everything else. And so I tried for like 2 years and he wasn't interested, but finally got him to basically sell me the channels and the name and the brand and the domain of the website, because he had just had a kid and he wasn't making a lot of money off it. And it was more of a hobby for him. And so basically that's how it started. I paid this guy and bought his domain and bought all of his channels. I thought, hey, if I'm going to go to advertisers and try to get them to sponsor this, I can't be starting a Facebook page with, 3 people on it and say, come give me your money. So right. I was able to save up some money, essentially buy his brand and his channels. I redesigned the brand new website, to a more of a traditional media standard. Was able to kind of build it up with a logo and all this, and did this all kind of behind the scenes for like 6 months and got it all ready to go. And then it was first launch day, I think, was November 30th of, I want to say 2022, because we just maybe 2021. It was 2021 because we've just hit our 3-year anniversary, I believe. Built this thing up with a combination of subscribers and advertisers. The daily show is something I thought in this day and age is just very necessary. The writing is great, but some people, everybody has YouTube, everybody has Apple, iTunes, podcast app. And so, I thought, hey, let's talk Boise State sports every day for 30 minutes to an hour. There's plenty of stuff, even in the summer, we can fill 45 minutes. And I obviously had to get others involved, like a Johnny, a Prater, a Tust. And then we've, since added to the team, obviously, with the Sanfords of the world and Kent Riddle and Brad Bedell and Riley Smith and Michael Callahan and Winston Venable, and the list goes on. But, just wanted to give a platform for some of those guys and for fans to hear them and talk sports. And so I think it's a unique combination of the digital side with the podcast and the shows, with still the traditional writing side. And, the pre and post game shows is a big one too. And, that's something that, even a lot of Power 5 schools don't have in terms of a live pregame show, live postgame show showing you warm-ups of the game going on. And frankly, I'm not surprised at all, that the Jay Tust and, Bronco Studios is getting started, because I thought that should have been going 3 or 4 years ago, which is why I started Bronco Nation News. I mean, a school like Boise State, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have a live stream going, showing warm-ups before a football game at Oregon or before a basketball game. And certainly the postgame shows as well, with how fired people are up after a game. Jump on there live and play some interviews and play some highlights and talk about the game. So I just thought there was a void. And I thought I kind of, believed in that Boise State fans, that there were enough of them around the country and enough passionate ones that wanted something like this and would pay $50 to $100 a year to help make it happen. And so we started it. It's continued to build for, and build. And then obviously the 247 opportunity, which was very appealing to me, came along as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about. No, it just started because I thought that people, the fans here were passionate enough. And I thought Boise State, I kind of bet on Boise State's rise too, that I thought that there was some good things ahead, and it all kind of worked out, perfectly for all involved, and super happy with it so far.
Yeah, and this is a great point here by Surf City Bill, a longtime follower of the channel, actually both of our channels. But it's a great point here that there really was no Boise State media, especially on YouTube or anything like that, for those that didn't live locally. And what you did has created so much name recognition for Boise State. Obviously, there was name recognition as well, but it's given that opportunity for Boise State to get its name out there and really help the fan base a lot. And now that you have a new move that has happened recently, the move to 24/7 Sports is only going to broaden those opportunities. So can you talk a little bit about, and I promise everybody that's joining in, the title is not a clickbait. We are going to be talking about fall camp, but just talking a little bit about BJ Raines and his founding before we start with that. But a final question really here before we start talking about that fall camp 2025 preview information. Can you talk a little bit about what this 24/7 step means for you, for Bronco Nation News, and really just for the fan base as far as added content, added availability, all of that?
Well, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. I really thought about it, and they approached me probably 6 months ago. And I know there was a little bit of, folks unhappy that the previous ownership group, or I guess people that ran that site, Bronco Country, were getting pushed out. And there's some people to this day that still don't like me because of that. And it is what it is. But I mean, they approached me. We talked couple years ago, they reached back out to me. I actually had a 30-minute call with the guy there, like the week of the Fiesta Bowl. I remember being on my patio down there in Phoenix at the Fiesta Bowl at the hotel, talking to the guy about it. So it's been a process several months in the making. And they reached out to me. They approached me. They offered me. And this wasn't me trying to, do anything and push anybody out. And actually, frankly, that was a part that made it hard, was because I knew the current people that were running Bronco country were going to be, out of the opportunity at that point. But they felt that they needed a full-time person there. The previous group was kind of part-time, more of a hobby for them. And they felt like Boise State was a team and a site that, frankly, have more subscribers and should be bigger and should be doing better than it was. And I don't say that negatively towards anybody else, but they wanted to, they saw that, Boise State is on the rise as well. And they believed that this could be a great site, for 247. And so they believed in me and, basically made an offer that made sense to me and my family. And so I still own the domain. I still own the name. I still own the logo. But it's essentially a content licensing agreement, I guess, if it's the easiest way to phrase it, where, me and my team and the Bronco Nation News LLC provide content for the Boise State site on 247, and the name, it was switched to Bronco Nation News, and our, website redirects there now. And so all of our content goes there. And I just thought the combination of the message boards they have, the traffic they get on the message boards, was huge for us, because that's increasing the views of our shows as well, because we can post some of the shows to the message boards. And then the recruiting. I tried to cover recruiting, but I just couldn't the way that I needed to. And when they've got Brandon Huffman and they've got Greg Biggins and all these national people, and now you have access to all the recruiting pages and the star rankings and the commitment lists and all the stuff that 247 Sports has, you combine the recruiting side of it, you combine the message board side of it, with the content that, I can provide, and the access that we have. And I just thought that we have a chance to, make this a really, really strong side. And no disrespect to any of the other, media outlets out there, but with Jay Tuss leaving KTVB, Brady is now left. So you're going to have, brand new people covering Boise State from the KTVB side. You've got two fairly new beat writers at the two papers that have only both been covering the team for a couple of years, and maybe don't have some of the inroads yet or sources, that we've had for 13 years covering the team. And they're both great guys, John and Sean. I'm not saying anything negatively towards them, but they're dealing with the same challenges I was. The Idaho Press doesn't travel to any of the basketball games, didn't send anybody to media days this year. The Statesman as well is cutting back on travel, and didn't travel to a bowl game a couple years ago, which sounds crazy to say. And they're cutting back. They don't do any basketball travel. I don't think they were even going to cover the NCAA tournament if Boise State had gotten in. So, and I don't say, like I said, I'm not trying to speak negatively towards anybody else. Those guys are great. They're doing the best they can. Their papers, companies have to make whatever business decisions they make. But that's one of the things that I liked about being out on my own, is I can make my own travel decisions. If there's enough money in the budget or enough money in the bank and I want to do it, I can just say I'm doing it. Or I want to buy a new camera, I can just do it. I don't have to ask 3 or 4 people if I can do it. And so that's one of the things I really like, is just the autonomy of being able to decide what is worth covering and what is not myself, and not having a boss tell me that. And so I just think that the whole combination of what we're providing at 247, frankly, is going to be unmatched in the Valley in terms of the travel we're going to do for football, the travel we're going to do for basketball. We'll be at every football and basketball home and road game for the 3rd, 4th straight year, unless there's physically 2 games going on at once and we can't make it from one to the other in time. But ever since we started BNN, that was one of the main things I said. Like, I got to travel to make this thing work. These pre and post game shows have to be courtside, have to be live Leon Rice coming on the show, not from my, my office back in Boise after a game. Like, we've got to be at these games. And so I've invested heavily in the travel. And hey, I could have $20,000 more in my pocket if I just said I'll just do these shows from the studio. But no, I'm investing, essentially my own personal money, business money, however you want to phrase it, to travel to these games and cover these events. And we were the only local outlet that went to the NFL draft. To cover Ashton Genty. Nobody else made that trip. So we're putting in the money and like I said, I love the other media in this town. I hope this didn't come off wrong. It's not a negative towards them. I just feel like with the changing landscape of media, there was an opportunity for us to capitalize on that a little bit and really kind of take a stronghold in this market of as the number one, site covering Boise State. And so I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we're certainly working towards it. And we've added, Chris Van Sickle to do a lot of our recruiting coverage. Nathan Carroll is, works for Pro Football Focus and has access to a lot of their numbers. And he's a very analytical, guy that provides some great feedback with the numbers. And he's going to have some great content during the year. I know Mike Prater's, you either love him or hate him, I guess, and there's no in the middle there. But I love him, and I think that's one thing this town, desperately needs is more honest, non-homerish, tell it like it is media types. And so some people don't like that from Prater because he's brutally honest sometimes. But I think that's what makes him great is he's not afraid to be negative when he needs to be. He's not afraid to tick off a coach with a comment. And so I think that, our team that we have, and we're continuing to look to add to it. And I mentioned all the former players that are involved in in a lot of the shows and post-game shows and Ball Talk with Johnny and Sanford and the Riley and Ridge show. And some of the things we're continuing to add, getting Winston Venable back in the fold here shortly. So I just think that it's a long answer, to your question. But I just think that there was a opportunity here, and 247 financially made it worth it for me. And I think that with their bandwidth and their power and what they bring to the table, with what we bring to the table at Bronco Nation News, I thought it made a ton of sense. And I am so fired up for this football and basketball season. And our team is ready to go. And tomorrow morning, first practice, I think we're going to be out there just, 3-4 deep with Bronco Nation News ready to go.
Well, and that's an awesome point as well. That brings us into our next part of this video, which like I said was coming. We're going to be talking about the 2025 fall camp for Boise State.
Let's move on.
Yeah, and that season as well. But again, as the content that you have provided at Bronco Nation News in a lot of other media spaces is unmatched. Bronco Nation is incredibly thankful to be able to have that opportunity that you provide, but also just what we get as a fan base in the Valley here in Boise. It's unmatched as well in that level as well among local media types. And so what are you most excited about covering this season? And then just how can fans engage with you? And you've got the YouTube channel, you've got the Twitter, I believe you have an Instagram presence, and obviously 24/7 subscription. So before we talk about what you're excited about covering here for 2025 and the fall camp and everything like that, how can fans engage? How can fans buy in?
Well, first of all, John Mark there is a tremendous video journalist working with Jay and the group over at KTVB for a long time. So I've been on the road numerous times with John Mark Crum, and he worked tremendously hard, as did Jay and all those guys at KTVB. So good to see John Mark on the chat there. But I would say first, the subscription's the easiest way. And I know you get your people out there that say, no matter what, I'm not paying for it. I can get my news free elsewhere. Like, I understand it. It is what it is. $50 to one person has a different meaning to $50 to another person. And I completely get it. And, right now they're offering like a $4 a month special for fall camp. $48 for an entire year. When you break it down, $4 a month, it's a cup of coffee. And like I said, when you break it down even further, per day, what's that, 10, 20, 25 cents a day, something like that. I told you I was bad at math. But it's, I think that's tremendous value, and I think it's worth it. And like I said, the pre and post game shows and some of the other stuff, I would hope folks can come up with $48 and subscribe. We'd love to have you. But I do get that from other folks too, that say, I'll get my free news elsewhere, like on your show or on some of the other shows out there that are free. And that's, I get it. And if that's the case, we still love you as well, just the same. So I totally understand that part of it. But obviously the main business model would be for folks to subscribe at bronconationnews.com. Help us out there, support our sponsors, many of which you see behind me on my banner here. That's a big part of our shows and things are our sponsors and folks that like Andy Rowe at Rowe Painting that believed in me from the start, and on down the line with all of our great sponsors. Travis Hawks has been a big supporter of mine from the Blue and Orange store. So there's a lot of people that I owe a lot of thank yous to for kind of pushing me over the ledge to do this. But the easiest way would be to subscribe, bronconationnews.com, get it there in the message boards, get the chats going. And then obviously, like I said, the YouTube channel, we'll be throwing we're supposed to talk to Maddox Madsen tomorrow after practice. We'll be dumping that interview on the YouTube channel. All of the interviews, we're going to have daily practice highlights. We're going to throw those on the YouTube channel. We're going to have all of our live shows, right there from the parking lot next to the practice field as practice is going on. We're going to have full coverage before, during, after practice, multiple stories a day. All of our practice observations are going to be going in the message boards and our thoughts on that day's practice and who stood out and things like that. So that's the easiest way. But yeah, following us on YouTube, following us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We do have an Instagram page. I need to do a little better job updating that. For some reason, Instagram is just the one I've never latched onto personally, but we do have a presence there, and I'm going to work on that. But follow us on our socials, tell your friends, retweet our videos, like our videos, all that good stuff. It all helps. Every page you helps. Like I said, support the sponsors. And if you're able to subscribe, BroncoNationNews.com. It's $48 for a year. And then the cool thing is it does renew at the full price next year. But when it renews, you also get a free subscription to Paramount Plus. And so that essentially pays for the subscription itself right there moving forward. And so you have access to all the other sites as well. I found this kind of cool. Like if you want to, before Boise State plays Notre Dame or something, you can, if you're a paying subscriber, you can read the Notre Dame message boards and read their site and see what they're saying about their stuff. And so there's a lot of other benefits to it as well. But like I said, we're just, guys trying to make a living, trying to have a fun time, and covering Boise State is what is, the profession that I chose. And it's been a ton of fun. Couldn't do it without the fans, couldn't do it without folks like yourself that allow me the opportunity to come on here and talk about it. And so it's been a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to the future, but anyone that wants to subscribe, BroncoNationNews.com, we'd love to have you.
Well, I assume everybody watching, all of my subscribers, are also subscribed to Bronco Nation News YouTube channel. If you're not, make sure you pause. Well, this is a live video. I'm just so used to recordings. Make sure afterwards you go over and you subscribe to that as well. But also consider making that investment. It is the best deal out there in sports media sphere to get just Boise State content in general. And then, like BJ said, you can also jump on some of the message boards for like Notre Dame and hassle their fans as well. So, but again, that's all awesome content. And we're going to get some of that awesome content on the show here today as well. Just kind of a little bit of a taste of some of the things that you can see on 24/7 Sports for BJ Rains. So let's move into what the title of the video is, which is looking at the Boise State 2025 fall camp. The biggest questions. All of you in the comments, please give your comments on what your biggest questions are for Boise State fall camp. Again, excitement, concerns, whatever it is, I'll be pulling those up as we go throughout, and we'll discuss all those as well. But just starting off the bat, I have some things that I want to talk about as far as my questions for Boise State fall camp. But just for you, BJ, you went to Mountain West Media Days. Obviously, you were there for all spring camp, and now you're going to be there for the fall camp as well. For you, what are your biggest, maybe if you had to say top 3 questions or what you want to see out of fall camp that will help kind of determine what the season's going to look like for you?
Well, I mean, if you want to go into individual positions and things, there's certainly some positions of concern that everyone's talking about. And I know it's the ones we've been talking about since January, but the questions haven't gone anywhere. And in some positions like wide receiver, it only got worse in terms of who kept leaving and looking for guys. So I would say the biggest one for me, honestly, is backup quarterback. And I know maybe backup quarterback's not exactly a sexy thing to talk about, but I mean, you're one play away as a Boise State fan from having a team that has hopes of winning the Mountain West and going to the CFP. I mean, let's be honest, after last year, if this team doesn't make the CFP, I mean, I think a lot of people will be disappointed. I mean, that's kind of become the new bar, I think. I mean, a 10-2 season, 11-2 with a Mountain West championship, I think a lot of people would be happy with that. But I think that the new kind of standard here is getting to the college football playoff, and you're one play away. One Maddox Madsen sack or bum knee or something, just shoulder hit or MCL injury. I mean, I knock on wood, but I mean, you're one play away from a guy that's either been a former walk-on or a guy that has like 3 career pass attempts, in mop-up duty, all of a sudden being, leading a team with those kind of expectations and aspirations. So the fact that they did not add anybody else was a little surprising to me in the transfer portal. And I get it. Like, this is Maddox Madsen's team. That he's clearly the starter. And it was tough for them to find somebody because a lot of people didn't want to come in and be the backup. They wanted to get paid and they wanted to come in and know that, they knew Maddox Madsen was a starter. So why would you transfer to Boise State if the guy that led them to the CFP is back and the returning starter next year? Like, I get it. They had a tough time. Nobody wanted to come here. But whether as the commenter said, whether it was a D2 guy, whether it was a JUCO guy, I mean, a Jalen Henderson type coming from JUCO that maybe was just happy to be a D1 player and happy to have a scholarship and didn't care what string he was. But I think somebody you would have thought would have been willing to take that bet that this guy is one injury away from me being in there. And they couldn't get anybody else to come in. And so maybe we're not being fair to Caleb Annett or, these guys that are behind him, Max Cutforth. But I mean, we haven't seen much from them. And I would be very scared as a Boise State fan every single time Maddox Madsen drops back to pass. every time a guy's running in his face, every time he tries to break a tackle and run for a first down, like you're one injury away from putting your hopes of and dreams of your CFP into either Caleb Annett or Max Cutforth. And I don't say that disrespectfully to them. Maybe they're going to be great and ready to go, but I just think a little more depth at quarterback would have been a preference going into camp. And obviously the wide receiver group, everyone's talking about that. When you lose a Prince Strawn, a Cam Camper, and Austin Bolt, that's a huge, concern for Boise State. You feel really good about Latrell Caples. I think Cameron Bates is ready to emerge. We'll see if, Whitlock, the JUCO guy, is ready to go, and which of these freshmen as well are going to step in and contribute, because a couple of them are going to have to. And I know you've got Chase Penry and Ben Ford and some of these guys, but in terms of like star power at wide receiver and known commodities that are going to go get you, 30, 40, 50 catches, they just don't have a lot of those guys right now. So I think wide receiver is a concern. Some of those young guys, who's going to step up, which freshmen are ready to go. Who's going to be this year's Cam Bates? But frankly, they have to be better than Cam Bates as a freshman, because you're going to need more of those guys to step up. So those two are two big areas for me. I mean, the defensive line, they brought in so many transfers and guys to replenish them. I think they lost over 1,200 snaps from last year's team along the defensive line, on the interior, and on the exterior. So where's the pass rush coming from on the other side? Who's going to help take some of the pressure off Jaden Virgin Morgan on the other side and replace Ahmed Hassanin? And then what all those guys in the interior you're having to replace as well are the JUCO guys and the transfers they all brought in ready to go. And they brought in some nice ones from Idaho, from BYU, from Hawaii. But I mean, some of these guys, but a lot of unknown there as well. And I'm very curious. I mean, we could go down the line every position. How's Colton Boomer going to be a kicker? How's the new punter going to be, Oscar Doyle? I mean, you could just go down the line, and there's questions at every position. But for me, backup quarterback and receiver, the two big ones on offense. And again, you could go, who's going to win the right tackle job? Who's going to be the left guard? I mean, there are questions pretty much everywhere. I do think that Matt Lauder in the passing game is going to be a big factor. I mean, Matt Lauder probably will lead this team in catches. So I think some of the receiving questions will be, softened by Matt Lauder being a big part of the passing game. But I would say backup quarterback, receiver, and then on the defensive side, that defensive line, how's that going to shake out? And are those guys ready? I think are the three big questions for me.
Yeah, and the quarterback conversation is the major concern, because obviously it was only a year ago that Maddox Madsen on a scramble ended up, injuring himself and kicking himself out for the rest of that year. And so it's his style, right? And he is a quarterback that plays to the limit. He doesn't go down easy. And people, they forget about his running ability, but that is an element of his game. He's not necessarily a dual threat quarterback. He had over 200 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns on the ground last year. And you can't just take that away, because then he's a very different type of quarterback. He's restricted in how he's reading the defense and his ability to scramble away and make the right play. And so I'm
curious about that though. Like, are they going to cut back? Are they not going to let him run as much? Are they not going to have as many designed runs? Are they going to make him slide earlier instead of cutting and trying to get the first down? Like that's part of Maddox Madsen's game that makes him a really valuable quarterback, is his ability to scramble and pick up those hidden yards, and on a 3rd and 7, maybe pick it up and get a first down from time to time. So they need, he's better when he's able to do that. If you're limiting him and not letting him do some of that because you're afraid he's going to get hurt, that doesn't make him as good of a quarterback. So I am curious from Nate Potter's perspective how they handle that moving forward.
It is going to be a very tough decision point there again, because like you said, I don't think he is as dangerous without the knowledge that he can run. And if teams know, well, okay, they're limiting him, then they can cover everything else a little bit differently. And especially when you have Maddox Madsen picking up and taking on such a bigger role this year with Ashton Genty being gone, and he's now having to step in from maybe the game manager role where he's flashing in moments to being the playmaker. I mean, he won Mountain West Offensive Preseason Player of the Year for a reason, because they expect him to be in that playmaker position. And part of being a playmaker is being able to have an impact with your legs as well. And even if it's taking away the design runs, if he's out there going, okay, I need to get down when I'm scrambling, then that also limits how explosive he can be. So that is definitely a major question. What you just said, though, about the tight ends is very interesting, because I think that is a major point. The last time the tight end led Boise State in receiving yards was Jeff Putzier in 2001, I'm going to say, or 2000, I think it was 2001. So Boise State obviously has always had tight ends be a big factor in their offense, but it's been a while since we've had the combination of a great, truly great tight end like Matt Lauder. I think he's going to be one of the best tight ends in college football next season. And also a lack of a clear, dedicated number one wide receiver or group of wide receivers to back up that position group. That's going to be an interesting factor. And I think it brings up here, which is also an interesting point about Nate Potter, because Nate Potter's obviously been working with the tight ends. Do you expect for his offensive style to be very much similar to Dirk, or do you think he's going to bring a different flavor to the table, specifically when it comes to the utilization of the tight ends there in the offense?
Well, I mean, I hope there's more downfield passing. I hope the playbooks, when you had Ashton Genty, I get it. There's no need to get cute. Just keep calling the same play and keep letting him run for 12 yards and then break the 75-yarder. Like, I understand that. I get it. But it did seem like at times the playbook was pretty vanilla. Not a lot of downfield passing, a lot of just runs up the middle. Again, I understand why they did it. It worked, but I do hope this year they open it up a little bit. I mean, the very first practice of spring camp, they ran a double reverse pass. And I know it was like they're just whatever. It's not like that. Not like they're going to run trick plays every game, every drive, but we didn't see much of that at all from Dirk Cutter. So I think that was a little bit of Nate Potter saying, hey, we are going to open it up a little bit, or at least I hope so. And so, no, I think they'll be similar, but no, everybody I've talked to said that Nate Potter is just an offensive genius and is just going to be great and mix it up. And I do think they're going to try to, put a little more creativity back into the offense, throw the ball downfield a little more. But again, when you have Sire Gaines and you have Malik Sherrod and you have Breezy Dubar and Dylan Riley, and you have, a first round pick potentially at left tackle and 3 returning starters, this is going to be a run first team again. I know some folks may not want to hear that, but I mean, I still think, like, why would you not lean on your running game? Now I hope it's more different kinds of runs and sweeps to the outside and pitches and fly sweeps and things like that, not just straight running it up the middle every time. But I still think the strength of this team is going to be running the football with this offensive line and this running game. I think any offensive coordinator would see that. And so I think it is going to be different. We'll see more downfield attempts. We'll see more creativity. But when it comes down to it, I still think the bread and butter of this team is going to be running the football.
How has Nate Potter struck you in your interactions with him now that he's stepped up to that full-on role of offensive coordinator? Does he have a lot of confidence in his position there? Is there a major differentiation in personality between him and Dirk, and just how he's running the offense and how he's running this offensive room?
Yeah, when he got the job, you're thinking, okay, this is a guy that played offensive line, has coached tight ends. It's going to be just same old thing, run the ball every play, and it's going to be kind of a boring offense. That's what he's going to lean on, tight ends and an offensive line. Didn't have a lot of experience, obviously, coaching quarterbacks or receivers or running backs, which is why it was really smart they brought in Zach Hill to focus on the quarterbacks. I've been impressed. He obviously knows what he's talking about. Even when he was a tight ends coach and we were talking to him, you could tell he knew what he was talking about, because I think he was the run game coordinator for a while and had some other duties that we talked to him about with Genty and stuff. He's fine with the media. I mean, Dirk liked this persona that he didn't like the media and liked to be kind of salty at times and stuff. But Dirk was actually a great guy to interview and talk to, and I had no problem with him. And there was the occasional question where you were a little worried that he'd get ticked off or whatever. So maybe you don't have to be quite as worried about how you phrase a question when it's to Nate Potter as maybe you did when you get called out by Dirk Cutter. But for the most part, he's been great. He's been fine. Now, we haven't had anything to rip him on yet. He didn't mess up a 4th and 2, or he didn't, there's nothing he's screwed up yet. So I think that, once they get through some actual games and there's some criticism of Nate Potter, we'll see how he handles that. But to this point, everything's been fine. And yeah, you mentioned, saw the comment about Zach Hill. I think he's a huge addition. Bringing in a guy with the experience that's been in Boise, been at Boise State, knows how it works here, has been through a Mountain West season. And you throw in his, time he got at Arizona State and elsewhere, and he went to Seahawks last year and what he learned there, coming back and just focusing on quarterbacks, not having to design the whole offense, not having to worry about everything else. He can just focus on 5 guys, and in particular one in Maddox Madsen. I think that's just going to be a huge difference for Maddox Madsen this season.
I think what made Spencer Danielson and the Boise offense as a whole so successful last season compared to what we saw under Andy Avalos was that Spencer Danielson was able to go almost hands off in the offense and just say, I'm going to have it say, obviously as a head coach, but Dirk Cutter, you're running this thing. And it wasn't the same kind of shackles that we saw on the offensive coordinator position like we saw in Andy Avalos. But a big part of that was how experienced Dirk Cutter was. I mean, you're dealing with a guy that was a former head coach in the collegiate level at Boise State and at the NFL. So it's pretty easy to go, okay, Dirk, you got this section. Do you think he'll be able to have that same level of trust and hands-off attitude with Nate Potter as offensive coordinator, being a first-year guy?
I think so. Yeah, I think what it sounds like talking to Spencer is he lets his assistant coaches coach. I mean, when you're the head coach, you're the CEO. It's a lot more delegating and things. And Spencer will come in with, I think we should do this here. Ford, I think we should go for it here. I think what do you got? But I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to come in and really take over. We got to run the ball, 70% of the time, and we got to do this and that, and you're scoring too fast, all this kind of stuff that we heard in the past. I mean, no, I think he's going to let. It's a good question. It's a fair question, and maybe one that I haven't really thought of and need to kind of maybe poke around and ask some people about. But I would suspect the way the person Spencer Danielson is, he hires a guy to do a job. He's going to let him do that job. And I've yet to hear Spencer Danielson has ever kind of gotten in the way of other coaches trying to coach and do their job. And so I would not expect that to be an issue. No.
Well, let's move from talking more about the coaching staff to the players again, because we are at 40 minutes here. So if you got to go, let me know. I know I said 45 minutes on the front end, but this has been a good conversation so far. So hopefully we got about another 10, 15 minutes in here, if that's all right. But just moving on to talking about players again and talking about putting that trust and putting that faith. That's what Maddox Matteson's role is going to be, again, being that playmaker this year. And it's not just going to be, hey, can he use his legs, can he use his arm, but can he actually run this offense and be consistent throughout and limit mistakes? Now, the fan base as a whole has been heavily critical of Maddox Mattson, and something that they love to point out is the phantom interceptions. I've never seen a fan base so obsessed with an imaginary stat that doesn't actually exist. But what would you say to some of those criticisms about Maddox Mattson that have been raised by the fan base? And do you think that he can shine and even improve in this role now as kind of the main offensive focus for Boise State?
Well, I will say that Pro Football Focus does track dropped interceptions, does track, plays that maybe should have been fumbled, or there are numbers. And I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I know Nathan wrote a story at some point over the summer looking at Maddox Mattson, and his, I think he had 5 or 6 turnovers on the season, maybe 6 interceptions, something like that. And you factor in like on a normal, what normally happens on the same plays that he made, he should have been at like 11 or 12. So I do think there was a little bit of a luck factor involved. I mean, people that subscribe to that, like, I don't think they're wrong. There were a couple of passes that were dropped. There were, times where maybe he fumbled that got it back. And so, yeah, people that have that opinion, they're not wrong. Like, yeah, he probably should have had a few more turnovers than he did. He got lucky a couple of times, but overall, I mean, he's the clear best quarterback returning in the Mountain West. He passed for 3,000 yards last year. And again, there's some people that say, oh, he didn't have to do much last year. Genty saved him. This year he's going to get exposed. I mean, I get all that. I understand that, and as we just talked about, the receiving core is not as good as last year, so he's going to have more on his plate that way. But no, I think he's a upper level quarterback. I think he's clearly a top of the Mountain West first team player of the year type guy. Is he one of the top, 15, 20 quarterbacks in the country? I'm not sure I'm ready to say that, but I think he didn't have the stars coming out of high school. He's not 6'5". He doesn't run the 4.3 40. Like, we get it. I mean, it's easy for folks that want to rip on him. He doesn't look like the typical, star quarterback, but he obviously has been putting up the stats and doing it pretty well. So is it going to regress a little bit and have a few more turnovers this year? Maybe so. But overall, is he a quarterback that pretty much any team in the Mountain West would take in a heartbeat to be their starter? No doubt. And so I think he's a very solid quarterback, more than good enough to lead Boise State to the CFP. And I think that Boise State fans, for the most part, have come around on him. And this year, the fact that there's literally no battle, no controversy, no nothing, I think fans have no choice. I mean, maybe that first interception in the South Florida game, I'm sure somebody out there will be calling for Caleb Annett to come in. I mean, I'm sure they will. But for the most part, I think people believe in him now. I mean, he got them to the CFP once, certainly, and I think that there's no doubt he could do it again.
And that supporting cast is going to be so huge. So before we talk about the running backs and then the special teams here, I want to end with those two thoughts. But before we talk about that, for the wide receiver side, and we've already kind of mentioned it already, but that is going to be the big question for Boise State, because you have such experience at the tight end position. The offensive line looks like it could be even better than last year, with only losing one guy in Dooley and then bringing back so much talent. So as long as they can figure out that right tackle position, everything else will be great. And Boise State's quarterback room, obviously Maddox Mattson, he can only go up from here, and he's got all this experience coming in as well. So I think all of those questions there, people are pretty confident about. But obviously, that wide receiver room is the big question point. You kind of already mentioned it. A couple things I got for you here is one, do you think that Caples, he's had to deal with some injuries in his career, and that's kind of held him back. 6th-year guy, do you think that Caples can step up and be that number one wide receiver, 800 plus yards type of guy for Boise State? And then if not, or even if he is, who else steps up around him as maybe that number 2 or number 3?
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, I don't see any reason why Latrell Caples shouldn't be a first-team all-league type guy. He's certainly got the experience, had the Achilles injury, but when he's been out there healthy, he's put up some pretty big numbers. And so he had really had a breakout year a couple years ago before the injury, and obviously last year was able to stay healthy all year. So yeah, I see no reason why Latrell Caples can't be is he going to get to a 1,000 yards? I don't quite know about that, but I think he certainly could be a number one type receiver that could catch you 60, 65, 70 balls. And I think that's as we said earlier, I think a lot of their question marks at wide receiver are going to be answered by the tight end position, and in particular with Matt Lauder getting a lot of the action. So I don't know about yards. Maybe I misspoke earlier. I'm not sure about yards, but in terms of catches, I think it's a very real thing to think that Matt Lauder could lead this team in catches next season. I still think, Capel, some of those guys might have a better chance in terms of the yards because of the bigger plays. But I think in terms of just number of catches, Matt Lauder has a great chance. But whether it's, I mentioned Penry, mentioned some of these other guys stepping up. And I think, Cam Bates is a very exciting guy. But they brought in 5 freshman wide receivers. And a couple of those guys, whether it's, Jones or some of these guys, they're going to need them to step up. And so that's one of the things I'll be looking at early in camp is which of these guys look like they're ready to go. But there's a lot of questions at wide receiver, but I think that, again, sometimes we're being unfair to the guys that are, behind them, just haven't had a chance yet. And somebody's going to emerge. They always do. And I think that group's probably going to be pretty hungry, tired of hearing us talk about how they're not any good this year. And I'm sure there's going to be some guys ready to step up and prove some people wrong.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Cameron Jones and Quentin Brown specifically from this freshman class. Got to interview both of them on the channel. Quentin Brown is just all speed. And then Cameron Jones, he looks already a little bit like kind of NFL's type style receiver. Had a lot of P4 offers as well. So
haven't you mentioned Chris Marshall either? And he's a guy
that's what I was going to talk about. Yeah,
wild card in all of this. I mean, we keep hearing a lot about he had a great summer training and is ready to go, and it's all about his consistency. And I mean, Phil Steele had him as a 3rd-team wide receiver in the Mountain West. So that says something. So if he had 5 catches this year, it wouldn't surprise me. But if he had 40 catches this year, it really wouldn't surprise me either. He is a huge wild card when it comes to this wide receiver discussion. And I am curious to see how much he can stay on the field in terms of practice time during fall camp and how he contributes early in the season as well.
And I was just about to bring that up because that's the exact terminology that Tyler Crow just used. I just finished the offensive preview with him. That'll be coming out in a few days here. But that's the same. It's the exact terminology he used about Chris Marshall, was that wild card factor. He thinks that he's been doing well and he looks like he could be ready for a huge year potentially. And Tyler Crow, he used the terminology. He said, like, if I heard that Chris Marshall had 1,600 yards receiving, it wouldn't surprise me. Am I predicting that? I'm not saying that, but if I heard it, it wouldn't surprise me. He has that kind of potential if it all plays out well.
1,600 would surprise me.
That would surprise me. I know. Yeah, I'm just quoting Tyler Crow. So
give him 40 catches and 500 yards. That'd be fine. But 1,600, I love you, Tyler, but that would definitely be a surprise.
I think so, just in the terms of that would be we'd have to be an air raid style. We'd have to be a little bit of using the Pirate Washington State offense to pull up that. But I do think that Chris Marshall, if he can live up that potential, that changes this entire conversation about the wide receiver room and the quarterback play and everything. Because, some of that tape from Chris Marshall looks very, almost a combination of Austin Pest and Tyus Young at the same time. So, like, if he can be consistent, that's the big question. But then the biggest question, I think, for Boise State this season, beyond the passing game, is in that run game. Because you have so many different players there, 4 guys really that could all step up, and the term has been thrown around, be starters anywhere in the Mountain West. And I think you could even expand that to a lot of other programs outside the Mountain West as well. But the question is, who steps up to replace Ashton Genty? You're losing over 2,600 yards rushing. He was leading the team, obviously, not just in touchdowns, yards rushing, but just in the offense as a whole. So for Boise State this year at the running back room, and I'll ask you this before we talk about individual people, but do you expect this to be a little bit more of a running back by committee approach and less of that number one or maybe number 1, number 2 back like we've seen in past seasons?
Well, I think someone's certainly going to get the majority of the carries, but is that 60% of the carries as opposed to 90%? Probably so. I do think it's going to be a little more spread around, but I don't think it's going to be 4 guys each getting 25% of the carries. You're going to have your 1 or 2 guys, and I know I saw somewhere you said you thought Breezy Dubar was going to be the starting running back. I don't know if someone hacked your account or what. I love you, but I just don't see that happening. I think he's in my opinion, no higher than third right now on the depth chart. I think that if Gaines is healthy and with what I saw from Malik Sherrod, I think those two guys are going to probably get the lion's share of the carries. And I do like Breezy Dubar. I think he has a chance to put up some nice numbers this year, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy during his time either. And so, if I had to guess right now, I still think that you're probably getting 50%. I mean, that's tough to say. Probably 40 to 50% of the carries to man, it's tough to say. I think half the carries probably goes to one guy, and I'm going to say that's Sire Gaines. Then it's probably 30 to 35% for another guy, and then maybe it's probably 20%, for the last two. I mean, I think it's going to be tiered a little bit. So I think you're going to have your one or two guys to get most of the carries, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a gap as it was with Genty. Part of the problem last year with Genty is everyone else was hurt. I mean, they went into some of those games with like two healthy running backs. So I don't think they intended for Genty to have as many of those 30 carry games as he did. They just didn't have a choice. Everybody else being hurt. So I suspect it to be a little more balanced this year.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on the balance concept. I think that first off, you have four guys that all have huge potential, but almost all of them are coming off of injuries. Malik Sherrod only played 4 games last year. Sire Gaines only played 3 games last year. Breezy Dubar only played in 7 games last year because he was also dealing with injuries. So all 3 of those guys, only one fully healthy is Dylan Riley, but Dylan Riley also wasn't, number one guy. So experience level is that also a concern there. So I think that at least early on, the first half of the season, you probably do see somewhat, not going to say necessarily running back by committee approach, but us a variety of packages, maybe something like we saw in 2019, starting off that Florida State game where you got like 4 guys, Mahomes and George Halani and all these guys, like all kind of sharing the load, Van Buren all together. And then they kind of figured out that number one guy a little bit halfway through the season kind of situation. So I think that's probably where we're leaning. I will address on the Breezy Dubar situation as far as my prediction goes there. I have posted a recanting tweet after the discussion with Tyler Crow. He was really high on Sire Gaines as well. And so I'm going to say that I no longer predict Breezy Dubar to be the leader coming out of fall camp. So I will recant that. My main point on that is I think that you have a situation where Sire Gaines has all of this potential. He's a really exciting product. I think he looks like a guy who could be a next level. Ashton Jennings a high level to compare to, but an NFL caliber type of running back. But he's also a guy that was a true freshman last year, only played in 3 games and got hurt and had a very serious leg injury and is going to have to come off of that and be recovered versus Dubar. While he's not a Sire Gaines level type of running back, first, second round potential pick type level like Sire Gaines could be, he's also still a really good running back. A lot of people forget that he has a lot of good speed and a lot of good vision as well in his running game that we saw in his freshman season. And then his injuries, I think, have kind of held him back. And I think you're going to see a different level from him this year with his experience and coming back a little healthier. So my point on that, again, wasn't that Dubar is going to be your number one guy the whole season. It was that it will take Sire Gaines a little while to actually recover and come back 100% and get into the level where he's that number one running back. But based on the discussion with Tyler Crow, sounds like he's a little bit further ahead than I thought. So I will say Sire Gaines probably number one out of fall camp. And then I agree with you. I think after that, it's a split between Sherrod and Dubar. Sherrod looks like a guy that's going to be a big, heavy factor in the return game as well. So maybe it is more of a split with Dubar there versus being that definite second round back. And again, Dubar is a great guy, a great running back, a great talent there. He's just maybe not at that level. But just because Sire Gaines is incredible, there's a whole discussion like with Malachi Nelson, Maddox Madsen last year. Just because Sire Gaines is incredible doesn't mean that everybody else in the room is garbage. It's just scaled levels and everybody brings their own packages. So.
And I think that, Ashton Genty, 2,600 yards, like it's pretty crazy that, he's gone and you feel pretty good about the running game this year. So whether it's whichever one of those guys steps up, I think all 3 of those guys and all 4, if you throw in Riley, you feel pretty good about the running game overall. No one's going to have those kind of stats, but if you kind of put all the rushing stats together at the end of the season, I think they're going to be comparable.
Absolutely. All right. I know we're kind of gone long here, so I got 2 more questions for you, and then I'll cut you loose here. All right. First question is just on the defense. You've already talked about the defensive line. I'm pretty excited about that. Some of the guys they brought in. I got to interview Max Steege here recently, and I think that he's a guy that could maybe not have an Ahmed Hassani type season, but definitely step in and fill that role. So I'm not overly concerned about that level, but I do have some questions like the fan base does about the secondary. I was excited about how they finished the year for Boise State. Those last 5 games were a complete turnaround from what we'd seen previously, and I think a lot of the fan base maybe didn't recognize that they were really good there to end the year. I know that there's some depth concerns in the corners specifically, but overall, I'm excited about this secondary. What are your thoughts? I know, again, that's something quarterback and secondary play have been the 2 biggest gripes of the fan base. What are your thoughts on the Boise State secondary, and what do you want to see out of fall camp to maybe give you some confidence in that position group?
Well, I was curious to hear Spencer Danielson say they're going to start Jaden Mickey, the Notre Dame transfer, out at nickel. I thought he was going to come in and battle with Irby for a starting spot at corner, but they're going to put him at nickel and have him battle with Banks, Devon Banks, the Washington transfer. They're going to battle at nickel there. So it seems like Irby and McCoy are pretty much locked in as the starters. And if there's an injury or something, he said they can move some guys around. But, Irby got better as the season went on. His worst two games were like the second and third games of the season, I think, early on. McCoy, you weren't expecting to get him back, and then you do with that, ruling for the JUCO. And that was a huge, boost to get McCoy back for another year. So both those guys back for another year, I expect them to be better. But certainly they have to be better. Overall, the passing game was not great last year. 50-50 balls, I know, is what frustrates the fans a lot. It seems like there's just a ton of chances to get interceptions or get takeaways or at least bat the ball down, and they wouldn't do that, and they'd give up big passing plays. And so I think that certainly those two guys should be better. They need to be better. And then how that shakes out at nickel, I think is going to be interesting as well. I mean, you feel pretty good about Benefield. You have Washington back there who started a lot of games at safety, but Derek Ganter Jr. comes over with just massive numbers from Eastern Washington as well in the transfer portal. So I think he's going to have to find a role and get in there and play at some point too. So I feel okay about the secondary. I know a lot of people want to rip on DeMario Warren and call for his job and all that kind of stuff. And I totally get that. But I think that, a lot of these guys got something to prove this year. And so are they going to be the best secondary in America? No, but are they going to be better than last year? I would think you'd hope that for sure.
Well, and just that point on the secondary's performance, again, that first half of the season was really when they were kind of melding as a unit and getting their strength in early on. The last 5 games were a complete reversal for Boise State. The last 5 games, Boise State didn't give up one touchdown pass of greater than 25 yards, and all teams they held to under 21 points. Again, I'm not counting the CFP game, but the last 5 games there, the regular season, the Mountain West Championship game, complete reversal for Boise State. And so, again, I think that secondary got stronger as the season went on. They returned almost everybody. Obviously, they lose Tubner, who was their general back there, and that will be something they have to get over. But otherwise, I think this Boise State secondary is looking for a really strong year and can move on from being a unit that was a liability in years past to just a neutral factor to now being a point where I think you can actually start winning some games with that secondary. And again, watching those fall camp battles and how they play out will be very interesting in determining that. And the last question for you here is for the special teams for Boise State is looking at the kicking battle. Because I know, again, a lot of people are assuming that it's going to be Boomer, but talking with Johnny Dalmez, he wasn't really sure that it could just necessarily be Boomer. He thinks that Reeser has a strong case there. Has not been designated who's going to be the starter. That'll be an interesting battle coming through fall camp. Who do you think wins that one?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think Colton Boomer – I mean, I agree. Reeser has, done some things in practice, and I think is going to certainly be in the mix. But I don't think Colton Boomer comes from UCF and comes all the way out to Boise, Idaho, for his last year if he doesn't expect to be the guy. And so I know they don't promise starting spots or anything like that, or they say they don't, but I would suspect it'd be a pretty big upset in my mind if Colton Boomer doesn't end up being the kicker. And, everyone knows it's oddly enough has experience kicking on the blue, won UCF the game on the blue, I think with 3 or 4 field goals in that game. So he's got some experience. I know he was injured last year, which led to him only playing the 4 games and then entering the portal. But if he's healthy, which all indications are that he is, I think to have a guy with that kind of experience, frankly, Big 12 experience now with UCF is a big deal. And so I think that's a great one. I would guess it'll be Boomer and Oscar Doyle. I mean, we saw that Podesta left the team, so you're really left with Oscar Doyle as your only option right now at punter. And so punting is punting. I mean, that's one of those things that I think translates, whatever level, And so he put up pretty big numbers at Weber State, and his average was better average than Boise State's punter last year. So, I mean, things, obviously it's a different level. I understand that, but he showed, when you're watching a guy punt, you can watch him punt anywhere. I know elevation has something to do with that, and I get it, but I would suspect that he's going to be, serviceable is not really the fair way to put it, but I think he'll be fine. I mean, you look at his numbers last year, look at what he did. I think he's going to be more than enough adequate to be a decent punter. I mean, you don't need all-American punters and kickers. You just need guys that aren't going to lose you games. Just be steady, make the big kicks when you need to. Don't have the 12-yard shanks against Oregon State or some of the punts that we've seen in the past. Just be a steady guy. Get you your 45 to 48-yard average, whatever it is. And so I'm not worried about either of those guys. I think they'll be fine. They both have had success in the past, but that is first time in a while they've had a new kicker and a new punter and a new holder at the same time. So a shout out Mason Hutton, the only returner at long snapper. And he's, I know it's hard to quantify, but certainly seems like he's getting a lot of love as one of the better long snappers in the country this year. So that'll certainly be an area, but unfortunately practice, there's no pressure. So how a kicker or a punter is doing in practice really means nothing. We're not going to get our first real look at those guys till the lights come on down there at South Florida.
Yeah, the pressure moment, how they react to that is completely different. All right, last question for you here. Love this discussion. Again, everyone, make sure that you're following along with everything that BJ Rains is doing over at Bronco Nation News, either through their YouTube channel or through the subscription to the 24/7. It's going to be great coverage, just like what BJ has presented here today, and even more so with all the footage of fall camp and everything else leading up to the season. But last question for you. Obviously, you came back from Mountain West Media Days. You were around the team last year, obviously, and now this season. What is the energy of the team right now? There was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy of like, hey, what we can do with this new head coach last year, and that led to the team getting to the CFP. What's the feelings around the team this year? What's the kind of energy? Is it different at all from last year? Is it that same vibe, like we're going to be in the CFP? I know they just recently, as you posted, changed their goal from we're going to get to a bowl game to we're going to get to a CFP every year. So just what's the energy? What's your impressions? Just overall feelings from this team having covered them so far this season?
Well, it's not get to the CFP, it's win.
Win CFP. Yes,
they're not. A lot of fans would be happy with just getting to the playoff, but their goal is to win a CFP game. And so, I think that they saw it last year, got a taste of it. It didn't go very well, but they also don't think they thought they played their best game, and that they didn't maybe get to show fully, how good they are. And so you got a lot of guys back that are hungry and didn't like how that went last year and want another shot at it. And so I clearly think they're the top team in the Mountain West. And so I think they're going to have a good chance to get back to the CFP. Obviously, the Notre Dame game is going to be a big one. You got to start off strong in South Florida and win that. But the way the schedule sets up, if they go, 11-1 and their only loss is to Notre Dame, which I think is very fair to predict, then they're going to be in a pretty good spot to get back to the CFP. But I think they realize, there's no reason why they shouldn't get back there. They got a strong team, both sides of the ball. They feel good about it. I mean, the swagger, I guess you could say, is kind of back at Boise State, and all the excitement of the North End Zone project for next year, all the excitement of the Pac-12 coming next year. I mean, there's a lot of buzz around this program. And I think that this kind of weird year here, this last year in the Mountain West, they've got a chance to be only the second team in Mountain West history to three-peat, along with TCU, going back more than a decade. So I know that's something they're shooting for. But yeah, I think they're, we'll know more seeing them at practice tomorrow and as we get into this. But from guys I've talked to at media days and other spots, I just think guys are focused, excited, but do see that there's a lot of potential for this team. Getting back to the CFP is now the standard. I mean, before it was winning the Mountain West, getting to a bowl game, but now how there is a group of 5 spot in the playoff, it is pretty much the standard, the goal, the expectation that every year Boise State's going to be in the playoff. And like I said, I think a lot of fans would be disappointed this year if they didn't get to the playoff. And so I think the players see that as well. That's the new goal every year. That's the new expectation, that there's no reason why they shouldn't be the top group of 5 team and get a playoff spot every year. And I think that they know they have the roster and the schedule to do it again this year. So a lot of people excited, and for good reason. And we'll get it all going about 9 a.m. Mountain Time tomorrow.
Well, make sure that you're tuning in there and following along with everything that BJ Rains brings to the table. It's some fantastic stuff, and nobody does it better in the Boise State media sphere. If you're looking for more content on the previewing the team overall, make sure you check out my Boise State 2025 preview series, looking at the offense, defense, special teams. That Alexander Tubner, Jonah Dalmez, and Tyler Crow come on to talk about all those 3 different units and what we may expect from them this season, highlights and everything and all of those. So thanks so much for coming on, BJ. Thanks everybody for sticking all the way to the end. Hope you enjoyed this experience. And again, make sure that you like and subscribe to both my channel, obviously, but also to BJ and everything they do at Bronco Nation News. Thanks again for coming on, BJ. It's been awesome to have you.
No, thank you, man. I just want to throw in there that you do a tremendous job, and I really enjoy all your interviews and shows that you do as well. So keep it up. You're doing a great job, and hope folks enjoy your content as well as ours. And been fun to see you the last several years build this platform up as well. So kudos to you. Hope folks continue to follow you and do comment and do things on your show. But certainly, hopefully folks will subscribe. BroncoNationNews.com. We'd love to have you, and we're excited to kick off fall camp tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season. It's going to be a great season for coverage. So make sure, again, that you're following along with the thing Bronco Nation News does. All right, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for being here. Make sure you like, subscribe. And as always, go Big Blue!